It's time to strap in and buckle up because Railslave Games made another one, and it's a prequel to NPPD Rush: The Milk of Ultraviolet. So you just know this is going to be something weird and probably not very good. My name is Graeldon, and I'm reviewing Steam games in alphabetical order to find the hidden gems among the piles of garbage, and today we're reviewing //Snowflake Tattoo //. At least it has a better name than the last one. Let's begin. Art is a very subjective thing. It's okay not to like something or to understand the artist's vision behind it. Video games are also a form of art, and Snowflake Tattoo is a work of art, in that I don't understand it and I don't like it. Railslave Games, the devs behind NPPD Rush, also created Snowflake Tattoo, which released roughly 1 year later in 2015, and is a prequel that sees the player controlling the antagonist from the original game, Ultraviolet, as she explores an ancient abandoned space station looking for her lost sister. Great in theory, but just wait until you see how it's been implemented. Starting with the title screen, we're treated to the game title presented in the style of an early 2000s YouTube gamer, complete with spinning text effects, and the first of many migraine-inducing text dumps. Not only is the font itself hard to read, but it flashes a myriad of colours at a rapid pace. They say that genius and madness are separated by a thin line of insanity, a line that Railslave Games clearly crossed when they decided to use this font with flashing colours almost everywhere in their game. The text dump gives us some initial backstory and explains some of the different icons you'll find while playing the game. None of this makes much sense at the moment, but you'd better appreciate it anyway because that's as much of a tutorial as you're going to get, so deal with it. Once again, there aren't any options, so let's get right into the game. To be honest, it took me several moments to figure out what the heck I was looking at when I first started playing. I mean, look at this screen. You've got a wall of text in the lower left, more text showing your collected items in the top right, and a massive circle with a weird shape in the lower right. And all of it is flashing. Add on top some snowflakes drifting everywhere for no apparent reason. Everything shifts as soon as you start moving, and suddenly it becomes apparent what's going on. Like NPPD Rush, Snowflake Tattoo is a top-down shooter, but with a few twists. Firstly, your viewpoint changes depending on whether you're moving or not. When stationary, the view zooms out and the walls condense into a solid object rather than the pixel sprite graphics. This allows you to see more of the space around you and spot enemies from further away, or it would if it weren't for the fact that a lot of your vision is still obscured by the UI elements. When you start moving, everything zooms back in to let you see the action, and you'll notice that the game treats the player as a light source, casting shadows onto anything out of line of sight. This is actually tied to another mechanic that we'll discuss later, but for the most part it's just to help hide collectibles and enemies, making the act of searching this derelict spaceship more challenging. Additionally, it's only when moving that your aiming reticule will appear, which allows you to defend yourself against the military robots that roam the ship, defending it from intruders like yourself. It's an interesting mechanic, but one that is ultimately frustrating as most of the enemies are quite small and move rapidly, making it challenging to aim as you must also be in motion to shoot. Oh, and if the UI wasn't already distracting enough, when you start moving, this person in a spacesuit appears on the left, because what the game was missing was more clutter on the screen. On the bright side, you're not using regular bullets. No, instead you're shooting something called sentient plasma, which can be used to form walls for your enemies to throw themselves against and die. On the less bright side, this includes yourself as well, so be careful where you drive. Also, unlike in NPPD Rush, you do have limited amounts of ammo, and it's very easy to run out if you're not being conservative with your shots. One last note regarding the UI, the text in the lower left is basically the ramblings of the main character, explaining a bit about Ultraviolet, but are mostly incoherent, disjointed attempts at being deep and meaningful, similar to something you'd expect to see scrolled on the back of a toilet cubicle door in the high school bathroom. Or sometimes they give actually helpful tips for the game. As you roam around the maze-like ship, you'll sometimes find piles of scrap that can be collected to reward you with random amounts of the different collectible currencies, which include metal, enamel, unknown, and collagen, plus scrap will sometimes restore some of your sentient plasma ammo or even your health. The other collectible you'll find are doll stakes. Yep, doll stakes. These are women who have been frozen in cryostasis that you can collect. Definitely nothing suspicious to see here. The problem with finding these collectibles is that they and the enemies spawn completely at random and presumably outside of a set radius from the player. So you'll spend most of your time roaming around in circles waiting for these items to appear. And I should mention one other collectible, light keys. Grabbing one of these will disable a light barrier for 10 seconds, allowing you to travel between one half of the ship and the other. There is only one light barrier in the map and there is only one map. I don't understand why this is here, other than to inconvenience the player, which I suspect may be the actual purpose, as I'll discuss later. Regardless, you'll use these keys to travel back and forwards between the two halves of the ship, because collectibles seem to have a higher chance of spawning on the half of the ship that you're not on. And this seems to include light keys, so good luck. You need to collect 10 doll stakes to access something called the Abstraction, an interdimensional trading shop who may be willing to trade for information about your missing sister. Where is this shop located? Well, given that it exists between dimensions, it's a bit tricky to find, and it's actually what the weird spinning circle thing in the lower right is for. The shape shown is a pattern formed by the light and shadows revealed when you stop moving. So to find the store, you'll need to collect 10 doll stakes and then use the compass pointer and the shadows to find the correct location to stop in. But that's not quite challenging enough. Each doll stake collected also gives you 5 heat. Each point of heat provides you with a single second to find the abstraction. So you basically get 50 seconds to navigate through the maze to a single correct location and access the store. Otherwise, you die and have to start again. Fun. Oh, and if your health gets low, you'll start to bleed out and eventually die. Even more fun. So, let's take a look at the abstraction. Aside from being a hideous space monstrosity, they also have items to trade for in what is possibly one of the least user-friendly shop interfaces I think I've ever seen. On the right side, you can see your current stats and collected items. On the left, in each wall of text, is an item to trade for along with what is required to purchase them. You can buy extra sentient plasma, increase your luck, increase your health, or just trade in your doll stakes for the best intergalactic currency, Great British Pounds. The spiffing Brit would be proud. Everything requires varying quantities of your collected items and some doll stake, so you're only ever able to make a limited number of purchases, and sometimes you won't be able to buy anything if you got really unlucky when collecting scrap, which happened to me several times. Options are selected by moving the barely visible snowflake in the center of the screen up and down and then clicking to make your selection. I'd like to point out that your 4 scrap-related collectibles, metal, collagen, enamel, and unknown, are listed in a different order here compared to when you're exploring. Also, metal isn't used for any purchases. Seriously, look. Plasma is unknown, collagen, enamel, and doll stake. Luck is doll stake only, and health is doll stake, unknown, and collagen. No metal anywhere. Once again, I'm not sure if this was intentional or not, but I have my suspicions. Now, you might be wondering what money is actually used for, because you may have noticed that you can't buy anything with it. Well, I'm not telling you right now, because to exit the shop, you have to choose to sleep, and this triggers a bizarre minigame where you control a person in space while doll stakes fly at you. I thought this was some kind of super stylized transition sequence when it first happened, like some kind of fancy loading screen, and it wasn't until later I realized you could move left and right. Are you meant to collect them, like you do in the top-down section? It turns out, no, you're meant to dodge them, which feels rather counterintuitive. If you had chosen to hold on to any doll stakes after trading, you will lose 1 for each time you get hit. You can either try to dodge or just hide in the right-hand corner, as you'll only get hit 2 to 3 times if you stay there. Oh, and while this is happening, the giant text at the top of the screen reads, "Your doll stake is in another castle." It's a nice retro reference, but one that feels completely unwarranted and out of place. There's nothing else here even remotely similar to Super Mario Bros. Not the genre of the game, the characters, or the plot. So it comes across as a tacky attempt to appeal to retro gamers. Minigame over, you're dumped back into a random location in the spaceship and the sequence repeats. So, how do you beat the game? Well, the game doesn't tell you, so I will. You need to trigger the abstraction 4 times, each time appearing in a different location, and then you'll reach the end of the game. You technically get 2 scores, one for each method of playing the game, money or doll stakes saved. Everything is presented in yet another text dump on screen, which like the rest of the game left me feeling empty and confused. Oh, and the game doesn't progress past this screen. You'll need to press escape to quit the game. The silver lining to everything is that the music, which has a cold, ambient, sci-fi feel to it, is actually pretty good, and there are a handful of tracks, all of which are a decent length. This means that the music suits the aesthetics pretty well and doesn't get too repetitive, unlike the rest of the game. Oh, and I guess the game completely forgot about the whole find your sister plot, as that doesn't even get a mention in the ending text dump. I hinted earlier that I had a bit more to say about this game, so here it is, but we'll need to take a step away from the game itself and talk about game design in general for a moment. Now, I want to preface this by saying that I'm not a game designer, developer, or programmer, just someone passionate about games that likes to think they know what they're talking about, even though they probably don't. Even so, I think what Railslave Games has created here is something surprisingly intentional that goes against so much of traditional game design, and I think that this is something that might not be named yet. If I'm wrong, please let me know in the comments. What I think they've done is use something that I'm going to call hostile game design. This is a way of designing aspects of a game to be anti-player, so that although they are functional, they're intentionally anti-fun. Now, I could be giving far too much credit to the devs, but hear me out. Mechanically, everything in the game functions as intended. You can navigate menus, you can move, aim and shoot, collect items, kill enemies, and so on. But everything around that is designed in a way that will make the player uncomfortable, uneasy, or aggravated. The text is in a font that makes letters hard to distinguish, often flashes colours randomly, and is almost always hard to read against the equally busy backgrounds. The screen is cluttered in such a way that it restricts the vision of the player, making you feel claustrophobic. Everything in the game is spread out and hard to find. There isn't a minimap provided, and everything looks the same, causing the player to get disoriented and lost easily. Enemies are incredibly strong and ammunition is scarce, and aiming is so difficult that combat is something to be avoided more often than not. The map is divided into two halves for no apparent reason other than to introduce a gate that blocks the movement of the player, slowing progress. There's no explanation for most mechanics in the game, and everything feels more convoluted and complex than it needs to be for a game of this scale. This leads to two possible conclusions. Either the devs are geniuses, or insane. I suspect that all of this is intentional to make the player feel how the main character feels, lost, confused, disoriented, and directionless. But, and this is a big but, the problem with this kind of hostile design is that it's an incredibly double-edged sword. You'll have a handful of people who are curious, who want to explore, and who understand the intrinsically artistic nature of games that's often overlooked. But you'll also have the vast majority of people who just want a fun game to play and don't understand what's going on. Backing up my suspicions are these lines from the devs that I found on the Steam discussions page for the game. Check the video announcements, first one. Failing that, ponder the name, Snowflake Tattoo. It wasn't made to be easily understood, that's not my jam. Fail? What, because you don't like it? Answer me a few things that have influenced your life, I will prove how different we are. Fail at what exactly? I make exactly what I want to for my fans, gathering a few here and there along the way. I expanded the NPPD universe in a huge and significant way. Job done. It's a good prequel to NPPD. To the devs, I say this. You've created an intriguing piece of art, but a god-awful game. To wrap this up, let's do something we haven't done in a while and look at some of the Steam reviews. Best thing if you're looking for a headache. 9 solid minutes of confusion. 0 out of 10 makes as much sense as the title. If this is supposed to be a joke, I don't get it. If this is supposed to be a statement, I don't understand it. If this is supposed to be art, I can't appreciate it. But if it's actually supposed to be a game, I get it. It sucks and was developed to suck. Can confirm this game gives you eye cancer. 10 out of 10 would get blind again. When I play this game, it feels like someone poured a whole gallon of bleach into my eyes. How did this game get published in the first place? Stay away. With a playtime of just under 2 hours and a price of $5.49 Canadian or your regional equivalent, it's pretty hard to justify this game, even from an artistic viewpoint. Once again, I applaud the devs for having a vision and seeing it through, but the reality is that what they've created doesn't give anyone a reason to play or experience it, let alone justify purchasing it. So, with everything in mind, my final rating for //snowflake tattoo / is metal out of 10. Like the item in game, it serves no purpose. Thanks for watching. Welcome to the end of the video. A massive thank you to all the channel members on screen for supporting the channel, especially our 2 Knights of the Holy Grail, Freaky Feline and Loveheart Gonzi. If you'd like to become a member, you can do so for as little as $1 per month. Just click the join button to see the available membership levels and perks. Thank you for joining me on this weird gaming adventure through the depths of Steam, and I'll see you next time in the very last game in the punctuation section of Steam. And until then, take care.